Every morning for 20 minutes, I would sit in my chair in that small apartment on West 72nd Street. Every morning, not 19 minutes, not 25 minutes, but exactly 20 minutes. And I tell you, within 3 weeks, everything in my world had changed. Everything. Now, you may think you know what I did in those 20 minutes. You may think it was prayer or meditation or some form of concentration. You would be wrong. What I did was so simple that most who hear me dismiss it, so practical that they search for something more mystical, so precise that they add their own complications and destroy its power. The technique I will give you tonight is not new. I have spoken of revision before, but the morning application, this exact method, practiced for exactly 20 minutes at exactly the same time each morning, this transforms revision from a pleasant exercise into a force that will reconstruct your entire world. But before I give you the method, you must understand why 20 minutes in the morning accomplishes what hours of evening revision cannot. The difference, my friend, lies in the nature of assumption itself. When you retire at night and practice revision, you are working with a tired mind, a mind that has been active all day, a mind filled with the impressions of the day's events. But in the morning, my friend, in those first moments of consciousness, the mind is fresh, it is receptive. It is in that creative state most akin to the power itself. I discovered this quite by accident in 1954. I had been teaching revision for years, teaching my audiences in New York to revise their day before sleep, to rewrite the unwanted events into what they should have been. And yes, it worked, but slowly, sometimes taking months for the revision to manifest in their world. Then came a period in my life when circumstances demanded immediate change. I will not burden you with the details, but I tell you I could not wait months for my assumption to harden into fact. I needed results, and so I began to experiment. Instead of revising only at night, I began each morning with 20 minutes of deliberate revision, 20 minutes of taking the previous day and reshaping it in imagination, 20 minutes of living mentally in the corrected version until it felt more real than what had actually occurred. The results, my friend, were immediate. Where months of evening revision had produced gradual change, 3 weeks of morning revision revolutionized my entire world. And I understood why. In the morning, consciousness emerges from sleep still malleable, still creative. The logical mind has not yet erected its barriers of what is possible and what is not. In this creative state, assumption encounters no resistance. It sinks into the subconscious like seed into fertile soil. But most who hear me make three critical errors. They practice sporadically. They practice with effort instead of ease, and they abandon the work before it has time to bear fruit. But before I tell you the technique itself, my friend, there is a specific signal you must learn to recognize, a signal that tells you whether your assumption has taken root in consciousness or remains merely wishful thinking. Without recognizing this signal, you will not know if you are working with the law or against it. I will give you that signal in just a moment, for it determines whether your morning work transforms your world or leaves it unchanged. Listen carefully. I will tell you of a woman who came to me through correspondence in 1957. She had been divorced for 3 years and desired remarriage to a specific man, a man who, she wrote, showed no interest in her whatsoever. She had been practicing what she called revision for 8 months. 8 months, my friend, with no change in her circumstances. When I examined her method, I discovered she revised twice a week when she remembered, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour, sometimes in the evening, sometimes upon waking, sometimes in the afternoon. No system, no discipline, no precision. At first she resisted when I told her she must revise for exactly 20 minutes each morning at exactly the same time. She said her schedule would not permit it. She said 20 minutes was too long to concentrate. She said she preferred her flexible approach. I told her plainly, the law responds to precision, not preference. I told her to choose 20 minutes between 6 and 8 each morning and guard those minutes as sacred. I told her to sit in the same chair, enter that drowsy state, and revise not just one event but the entire previous day into what it should have been. She wrote back that this seemed excessive. One event, she felt, was sufficient. Why revise an entire day when only one interaction with this man mattered? You have heard me speak of revision, and many have misunderstood me. Let me be plain. We do not revise individual events. We revise the consciousness that created those events. When you revise systematically, when you reshape day after day in imagination, you are not changing circumstances, you are changing yourself, and when you change, your world must change to reflect your new state of being. I convinced her to attempt the full practice for exactly 3 weeks. Every morning at 7, she would sit in her bedroom chair and spend 20 minutes revising the previous day. Not just her encounters with this man, but every conversation, every interaction, every moment into its ideal form. The first week, she reported, felt mechanical, even foolish. The second week brought doubt. No change in her outer circumstances, no sign that her work was bearing fruit. I told her what I tell you now. The seed that is planted in the ground shows no sign of growth for days. Yet beneath the surface, invisible processes are at work. In the third week, everything shifted. The man began calling, began suggesting meetings. By the end of that week, he had proposed, not gradually, not after months of courtship, but suddenly, as though a switch had been turned in his consciousness, as though her revised version of their relationship had become more real to him than their actual history. And here was the signal I promised you. In that third week, she wrote to me, something remarkable had happened to her morning practice. The revised events no longer felt like imagination. They felt like memory, more real than what had actually occurred. This is the signal, my friend. When your revision feels more natural than the original event, when the corrected version becomes your true memory, then you know the assumption has taken root in consciousness. This is the power of systematic morning revision. You are not merely correcting yesterday's events, you are impressing upon the creative power of consciousness a new pattern, a new assumption about who you are and how your world responds to you. Now hold this thought, my friend. I will give you the application in a moment, but first you must understand why 20 minutes, no more, no less. The conscious mind can maintain creative attention for approximately 20 minutes before it begins to waver, less than 20 minutes, and the impression is too shallow to take root. More than 20 minutes, and you begin to work with effort instead of ease. The moment effort enters, you have moved from assumption into wishing. And wishes, as I have told you before, are confessions of lack. 20 minutes allows you to enter that drowsy state, maintain it, and work within it without strain. 20 minutes allows you to revise thoroughly without exhausting the creative faculty. 20 minutes practice consistently will revolutionize your world faster than hours of sporadic effort. Now I must insist on this, my friend. This is not concentration, this is not visualization in the ordinary sense, this is assumption, this is living mentally in the corrected version until it feels natural. Do not let anyone, including yourself, talk you out of this distinction. Now I must tell you something most teachers will not. There is a specific moment within those 20 minutes when the assumption either hardens into fact or evaporates into wishful thinking. Miss this moment and your revision remains merely pleasant daydreaming. Catch this moment and you command the creative power of consciousness itself. I will tell you that moment next, and it changes everything about how you approach the morning work. Remember what I told you a few moments ago about changing consciousness, not circumstances. Now this is where you see why. I recall a gentleman who attended my lectures in Los Angeles in 1962. A businessman who had been struggling with a particular client relationship for over a year. This client, he told me, was hostile, demanding, impossible to satisfy. Every interaction left him frustrated and his business relationship deteriorated further. He began the morning revision practice, spending 20 minutes each day revising his encounters with this client. Instead of hostility, he imagined courtesy. Instead of demands, he imagined appreciation. Instead of conflict, he imagined mutual respect and profitable collaboration. At first, he found this difficult. The actual relationship was so contentious that imagining its opposite felt false. He would sit in his chair and attempt the revision, but his mind would immediately return to the reality of how difficult this client truly was. This is the critical point where most abandon the work. They attempt revision but cannot maintain the feeling of the revised version because the outer facts seem too contrary. They forget that we are not trying to change facts, we are changing the consciousness that perceives and creates those facts. I told him to persist. I told him that the feeling of naturalness would come with practice. Just as a new suit feels strange until you have worn it several times, the revised version of any relationship will feel unnatural until you have lived in it repeatedly in imagination. By the second week of practice, he reported that the revision was becoming easier. He could maintain the feeling of pleasant collaboration with this client for the full 20 minutes. By the third week, he said something remarkable had occurred. He had begun to forget which interactions had actually happened and which he had revised. The revised version felt more real to him than the original events. And then in the fourth week, the client's behavior began to mirror the revision. Phone calls became cordial, demands became requests, hostility gave way to genuine appreciation for his services. Within a month, this client had become one of his most valued business relationships. The client had not changed. The businessman had changed his assumption about the client, and the outer world conformed to his inner conviction. And here is the moment I promised you. It came for him as it comes for all who practice correctly. At the end of each 20-minute session, just before rising from his chair, he would feel a sense of satisfaction. Not hope for the future, but satisfaction with what had already been accomplished. This is the moment, my friend, when revision moves from imagination to satisfaction, when you feel the naturalness of the wish fulfilled rather than the effort of trying to manifest it, then you know the assumption has impressed itself upon consciousness. This is what I mean when I tell you that the world is yourself pushed out. Change your conception of any person, any situation, any circumstance through systematic revision, and that person, situation, or circumstance must change to match your new assumption. But before I tell you how to apply this tonight, I must address one thing more: the question of persistence. Most who begin this practice abandon it within days because they do not see immediate results. They practice for 3 days, see no change in their circumstances, and conclude the method does not work. Make no mistake about this, the law always works, always. But it works according to its own timing, not according to your impatience. The world will tell you that 3 weeks is too long to wait for results. They will tell you that real manifestation should happen instantly. I tell you they are wrong. I have observed that sustained assumptions take exactly 3 weeks to harden into fact. 3 weeks of consistent daily impression upon the subconscious mind, 3 weeks of feeling the naturalness of the revised condition, 3 weeks of living mentally in the end result. This is why most fail. They give the law 3 days and expect 3 weeks worth of results. They practice casually and expect consistent results. They revise occasionally and wonder why their world remains unchanged. The creative power of consciousness responds to persistence, not sporadic effort. It responds to feeling, not thinking. It responds to assumption, not hope. Those who practice morning revision for exactly 3 weeks, without missing a single day, without shortening the time, without altering the method, those people witness what can only be called miraculous changes in their circumstances. Before I tell you how to apply this tonight, there is one final piece that separates those who see their world respond in 3 weeks from those who practice for months with no result. It concerns what your consciousness is doing the very moment you wake, before you even open your eyes. Miss this piece and your morning revision fights against your natural state. Master it and your revision works with the creative power from the first moment of practice. I must address this now. Remember that precision I spoke of earlier. Here is where it matters most. The moment you wake, before your feet touch the floor, before you engage with any demand of the day, your consciousness is in its most creative state. This is when you must begin your work, not after coffee, not after reading the morning news, but in those first moments when consciousness is fresh from sleep. Now, tonight, when you retire, do nothing different. Sleep naturally. But tomorrow morning, before you engage with the world, before you read the news or attend to correspondence, you will begin this practice. First, you will choose your time. Between 6 and 8 in the morning is ideal, but choose the 20 minutes that you can guard consistently. Second, you will sit comfortably in the same chair each morning. This creates a physical anchor for the mental work. Third, you will allow yourself to enter that drowsy state, that state akin to sleep where the conscious mind relaxes its guard. Fourth, in that creative state, you will begin to revise. Start with yesterday. Take the first interaction or event that did not satisfy you and revise it in imagination. See it unfolding as you would have liked it to unfold. Hear the words that should have been spoken. Feel the satisfaction of the corrected version. Then move to the next event requiring revision. Then the next. Do not strain to visualize clearly. Do not work with effort. Simply assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled regarding each revised event. Live in the corrected version until it feels natural, then move on. Continue this process for exactly 20 minutes. When the time concludes, rise from your chair and begin your day. Do not analyze what you have done. Do not wonder if it worked. Do not look for immediate signs. Simply trust the law and continue the practice. You will find that within days the revision becomes easier. Within weeks, the revised versions begin to feel more real than the original events. Within 3 weeks, your world will begin to reflect the pattern you have been impressing upon consciousness through your daily practice. Some of you will be tempted to revise for longer periods, thinking more time will produce faster results. This is an error. 20 minutes allows you to work in that creative state without effort. Longer periods lead to mental fatigue and forced concentration, which defeats the purpose. Others will be tempted to skip days when circumstances seem pleasant, when nothing requires revision. This too is an error. The purpose is not merely to correct unpleasant events, but to establish a new pattern of consciousness. Consistency in practice creates consistency in results. Still others will begin this work and then abandon it when they do not see changes within the first week. They forget that every seed requires time to sprout, every assumption requires time to harden into fact. 3 weeks. Give the law 3 weeks of consistent application and you will never doubt its power again. I have seen this method transform marriages, businesses, health, relationships, and circumstances that seemed hopeless. I have seen it work for those who could barely visualize and for those who considered themselves expert at mental work. I have seen it succeed where years of other methods had failed, but I have never seen it work for those who practice sporadically. I have never seen it work for those who change the method to suit their preferences. I have never seen it work for those who abandon it before the 3 weeks conclude. The choice, my friend, is yours. You can continue revising casually occasionally when you remember and continue receiving casual occasional results. Or you can give this law the precision it deserves and witness the transformation of your entire world. 20 minutes each morning, the same time, the same chair, the same method, for 3 weeks without exception. This is the price of a changed world. This is the discipline that purchases freedom from unwanted circumstances. And I tell you now what I have told audiences for decades. The moment you make this commitment, the moment you decide to give the law 3 weeks of consistent application, you will know within yourself that your circumstances must change, not because you hope they will, because you have assumed they already have. And now I tell you, my friend, I tell you the secret you have just heard is not a secret at all. It has been hiding in plain sight in every sentence I have spoken. You are not practicing a technique, you are entering a state. The state of the wish fulfilled, and from that creative state, consciousness creates without effort, without strain, without doubt. The morning mind, fresh from sleep, slips into this state as naturally as water flows downhill. This is why 20 minutes in the morning accomplishes what hours of evening work cannot. You are working with the creative power at its most receptive moment. Tomorrow morning, try this once, just once. Sit quietly for 20 minutes and revise yesterday into what it should have been. Feel the satisfaction of the corrected version, that is all. You may find that consciousness begins its perfect work immediately, or you may find that the assumption must be persisted in for days or weeks. Both are well, my friend, both are the law in operation. Remember always what I have told you tonight. The world is yourself pushed out. Consciousness is the only reality. Imagining creates reality. What you assume in the silence of your morning chair, the world must reflect back to you as fact. 20 minutes every morning for 3 weeks. Give the law this precision and it will give you a transformed world. May you wake tomorrow ready to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. May your morning revision become the foundation of a life beyond your current imagination. May consciousness reveal to you its infinite power to create. And until we meet again, my friend, live in the end.